Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to Planet Zoo. We are back here in Arcadia and today the only thing we've got left to do is finish off the interior of this research centre, and as you can see this is the final image, so we're going to rewind time and I'm going to show you how we got there. So let's dive into our speed build. So as I said, we're sorting out the interior of this multi-exhibit research centre slash university slash education centre, whatever we're going to decide to call it, but we want to get the interior done and we want to do this a little bit different to what the exterior looks like, which is this really nice clinical kind of white, very stark sort of area. We want to do something a little bit different inside, so we want to use some darker contrasting colours to emphasise what the whole building looks like. So we're using some of the new Indonesian brick for a lower level here, and then on the upper we're going to be using metal cladding. And I just think it's a really nice contrast. We did this on stream and it was kind of a suggested thing, so the metal plank wall panels with the Indonesian panels underneath, and I think it's got a really nice texture to it and it still continues to contrast. You've got that really nice colour gradient with the darker bricks going into the slightly lighter metal planks and then the white plaster above it, all framed really nicely with the conservation cladding pieces. So we took out a couple of pieces here so that we could put in some glass, and then the next step was to start duplicating this across where our exhibits are. So what we've actually got is above us is going to be like a bit more of a suspended ceiling that's going to be slightly lower than the areas where the walkthrough exhibits are. So this metal wall planks here, they come across and they are actually going to be the height of the ceiling. So once that's all put into place, it's all going to look really nice and tidy. The next step was to come around with our actual exhibit frameworks here. And what I wanted to do was actually make these a lot smaller than the traditional exhibit sort of size. So we want to kind of have like a really small area for our keepers to kind of look through and check on the animals that are inside these walls. So we have gone with the same kind of decorative like color scheme as the actual walls on the opposite side, but I think we've swapped the contrast around a little bit, so the lighter brick is a little bit more prominent as compared to the darker bricks of the kind of main interior walls. I just think that gives a nice contrast. Then again, more conservation cladding beams in there, and we turn these a different colour. We make them white, kind of like a greyish white, and I think that just gives it a nice little pop. So it's not too bright, but it also isn't too dark and garish that it blends in with the brickwork. I just think it stands out really nice. And then we were going to bring in our actual exhibit education boards, very much like we did over in Old Town, and put these in at a little bit of an angle. I did originally want these to just be like TV screens on the wall, but they do stick out a little bit too much into the actual habitat itself, so it's not something that was going to work. But having them kind of on the windowsills like we did within Old Town was a much easier thing to do and a better idea all round. Next up, we came back to our metal cladding here and we basically duplicated this all the way around so we could have kind of the whole thing wrap all the way around the roof of the exhibits. And on these sides that were kind of like the front-facing areas, you can see here, by the way, we've still got some guests in here. That's because I had it opened up to guests at the start of the stream and we were just in the process of kicking them out. But we came in and we were just checking to make sure that the actual walls that we'd built didn't interfere too much with the habitat. And I think it works pretty nicely. Now, unfortunately, this doesn't work so well. So we did end up sinking that back in and then we turned that to a different colour, and it still doesn't interfere too much with the actual backdrops of those exhibits, which meant we could create a little bit of a sign here to make it look nice and neat and give it a little bit more of a flair to it. So we just dyed some conservation cladding panels white, so it looks like it's meant to imitate text, but we don't want to do like really small text in here, and I don't want to do a TV screen and design like custom signage or anything for the place. So that's just gone in there, and then we'll put a little TV screen on there and a few other bits and pieces as well, just to flesh it out and give it a bit more dimension. It's also worthy of note that today I'm actually using some community workshop items to really flesh this one out. I will tell you who they are by, and I'll put the links in the description, but we'll talk about that when we actually come to it and before the tour. There were some really good ones in there that people have clearly put a lot of time into, and a lot more time than I have, and I thought it would be a really good idea now to kind of pay homage to the wonderful stuff that goes on in the workshop in Planet Zoo, and do a little bit of a kind of showcase of some of the stuff that I have used to really finish this building off. And we'll talk a little bit about them when they kind of come to it. One thing that I haven't actually put in this build is we make use of some of Ricey's decorations. So there's a planter and pottery pack that I will link down below. They have been used within this build, and I think they're fantastic. Really nice, cute little planters that you can just put round. Some of them are hanging, some of them are to be put on shelves and stuff, and I just think they're really cool. So Ricey's planter and pottery pack is a good one. Ricey has a load of other stuff, some fonts and things. It's well worth checking out their workshop just to see what items you can grab if there's anything of interest. And as I'm talking about them, I might as well tell you what the other one is. We use some office furniture here that is wonderfully designed by Saphira Green. It's well worth checking out her workshop stuff because some of the stuff that is in there is absolutely incredible. Back to the build. We wanted to finally link up the aircon unit so it now actually matches up identically with the upper roof section where we have it running along the actual roof and then comes down into the main kind of bulk of the building. So it's this continuous aircon unit. You can see we are constantly bringing the roof back down just to make sure that everything matches up and then removing it again so we can get back to work on things. And this was a really nice way of working. All that was left to do now was highlight this entire structure that we built, take out the exhibits, and then duplicate and move this all the way across, and that just gave us the finishing touch and duplicated and kind of had that synchronicity with the other side of the building. And we just needed to make sure that it all lined up properly, and bam, there we go, saved ourselves a lot of time. Now obviously at the moment all of these exhibits are kind of open and the glass is poking through and everything, but we actually do put all of the backdrops on there, so there's only one place to look at these animals and it's through those windows, and it works really well. I'm really happy with how this has turned out. It was a bit of an extensive build. You can see here we're just starting to put in the walls of our staff facility now, and I wanted to keep this really nice and simple. Now you can see that there's not a lot of room for maneuverability here for our actual staff, so we needed to try and kind of do the best we could with this compact space. I could have made this bigger, but I found this was probably the biggest building I've ever made in Planet Zoo, and actually the amount of time it has taken to kind of flesh this one out has kind of led me to think I may have overexerted myself for this one. But I think it's necessary, and I'm really quite pleased with the final outcome. Obviously it's not all been designed myself because we've been making use of the props and stuff that people upload to the workshop, but you know, if you don't have a lot of time and that's what you need to do, then that's what you need to do. I don't think there's any shame in using workshop stuff, and in fact it's something that we've talked about on the stream where a lot of people have said they're very grateful for the workshop and things, and it kind of saves them a lot of time. And why shouldn't it save other people time, and why can't we kind of shout out the creators that have made these wonderful creations within the actual workshop? Because some people are very good at that, those tiny little intricate things, and others aren't. I personally think I'm very good at designing kind of habitats, doing rock work and things, but when it comes to buildings I can get the exteriors done very well. But the interior, because this is the first kind of interior building that I've done that has some extensive decoration in, I found it very difficult, and I've kind of found myself running out of ideas. So it's been amazing to go to the workshop and pick up some stuff that other people have done. Anyway, this window space here is going to be filled with TVs, and you can already other stuff that we've done is just flesh out the walls and stuff and put in some signage. I wanted to make use of the conservation slats here again because that's basically my theme when it comes to staff areas and stuff in these neutral areas, so it's worth just keeping that momentum going through with those pieces, and it offers us that synchronicity. It's almost like this is the brand of Arcadia. So we carried on using those conservation slats, and then I thought, well, we've kind of sealed off this butterfly area now, so let's put in some windows in between the actual slats here. And something else we're going to expand on once we've actually finished the basic stuff on the interior is putting some more greenery and stuff within this area, because it needs something just to give it a little bit of a pop of colour and stop it from being so bland. So we took some Indonesian panels here and just moved them across, leaving a gap in between the actual slats that are in there. Once we've got that, we'll put in another piece that's just a little bit further down and move that up so it's on par with the actual ceiling. Then we'll move these windows all the way along and put some glass in. So we've got these nice little windows going into the final butterfly exhibit here at the front, and it just makes the whole thing kind of flow together very well. We then put in the glass like I've already mentioned, and then topped it off with some more Indonesian brick. And I really like the way that these textures merge together and stuff. I think it looks really cool, so it's nice to kind of keep using that throughout. We then put in some pillars just to hide that garish looking plasterwork that's sticking out, and then moved on to the next part of the build, which is actually going to be some nice decoration and stuff. So we came along again, just moving some of those conservation cladding pieces back into place, and then a couple of finishing touches on our staff buildings here. Now obviously some of these have got cladding to decorate the signs themselves, and some of them are just sitting flush, and that's just to give us a little bit more variation and make it look, you know, not, we want it to be similar and have those nice similarities and stuff, but we don't want it to be too similar so that it looks corporate. I don't want, that's the feeling that I'm trying to avoid, despite the fact that this is more of a corporate building. Anyway, quick tip if you're wanting to do overhanging lights is you get those lights and you have them snap to the center of a piece that's on the grid, duplicate all of the grid pieces, bring them into position, and then take them out. So you've got your lights set nice and perfectly, and then you just highlight all of your lights and just move them up a little bit so that they are matching with your ceiling where you will have taken out the piece that's on the grid. Next, the actual roof piece here, I thought the whiteness all the way across the top there was a little bit too much. So I took that out and we made a nice skylight for our staff areas. Now at the moment, these are going to be just decorated areas. There's nothing going to be in there, but if we were to open this to the public, we'd put in some information kiosks, maybe some shops and some food and drink vendors and stuff. But for now, it's going to resemble like an office and a teaching space for our actual students that are going to be coming here on campus, or any researchers that are here to look at the exhibits that we've got in store here. And then obviously, because we'd made that woodwork adjustment, we then had to change the plaster of the roof, but this kind of left us with a really nice skylight that was very basic but still did the trick. It's exactly what I wanted from it. Moving on now, we're going to start decorating some of these mulch pieces that we put in. So it was all just about getting the woodwork lined up so that the mulch sat in very nicely in the planters, and then we had to put a plaster roof on here to actually support the mulch, because otherwise it's just going to fall down onto the floor and we don't want that. Then once we'd kind of got all of this basic framework in place, again we had to make some wood adjustments here for the inside of the walkthrough exhibits. So they were kind of like just simple frameworks that we created. It's just all these tiny little tidying adjustments that we've kind of neglected on the interior of the building, given that last week's episode was all just about getting the exterior structure completed. And obviously we had a little bit of trouble lining stuff up, but once it was done, we'd created this really nice like wooden supporting frame that again I think sits really nicely against that Indonesian brickwork. And I really love this wall piece as well. I think the contrasting colours within your bricks is a really nice kind of touch, and they can look really nice. I mean, I can see a lot of shops using these because that's kind of the thing at the moment. We've got a lot of kind of restaurant-y type fast food vendors are using these a lot because it gives it a really nice decorative feel. It looks a little bit more professional than your standard fast food joint, I guess. I've seen this on like Starbucks and McDonald's and stuff. They use this really nice painted brickwork that's varying in texture and colour. So then we just put in a few tools and stuff, and I was conscious at this point that I was starting to run out of time, and wanting to get the video out in good time. I think maybe we could do a little bit more decoration in here, but actually I'm really happy with how it looks at the moment. Like I said, this is just a simple facility. We're not going to have guests coming through here at all, so easing back on the decorative kind of ideas a little bit is really nice, and we can just look through the windows and see how it all looks. Obviously when you see the tour it's going to look pretty nice. So yeah, we came in to do the flooring on what's going to be our office area, and obviously some of it, because we built this on the grid, is poking through, so we just did a couple of rockwork pieces in there to cover up the flooring that's sticking out the other side. Really easy. You don't have to try and make these really elaborate curved floors to match that structure. Just do it this way and then cover up the exterior where it's overlapping. It's much easier than going back through. Obviously we have a little bit of clipping going on there because I had to change the grid size and fit some little pieces of the floor back into place. But moving on, it was time to work on the basic structure of our fountain. Now this changed. I'm not completely happy with it, but because it's not a large part of the build, we don't need to make it look too elaborate, but the eventual kind of end piece and the end product of the whole thing I was pretty happy with. We did start it off like this, but that idea changed. Now let's decorate with our office furniture. Now this is by Saphira Green. It's fantastic. I've already mentioned it before. You're going to see some of the other stuff that I used a bit later on, and I'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to that point. This information kiosk is by Romanique83. I did make a couple of adjustments to it, but that's it. All of our staff stuff is in there and those areas are decorated. Now coming back to our interior here, I wanted to make a little gantry that runs all the way along the top, and this is just again a little bit more decorative fluff to really flesh this area out. And this is actually for maintenance and stuff, so that any mechanics and things would be able to climb up into this area, walk along, maintain the lights that we've put in and maintain the air conditioning and things like that. And also you would kind of imagine that it would be any sort of upstairs electricity and stuff that they'd be able to do work on when they actually need to get up there. And again, this is using the conservation blind slats and a mixture of metal beams and the mesh pieces, and that's it. It's pretty easy, very simple. It was just a case of getting it all lined up, duplicating it, moving it all the way around in a little bit more of a uniform fashion, very similar to how we actually integrated the air conditioning units themselves, came up to this end piece here and then ran a new world, I think it's just a grid of some description. We ran that all the way along, so it became a ladder for us. That's something that I've used before. They make a really nice ladder if you're just looking for a quick fix. It's not something that I would usually do. I'd like to build my own, but because timing is like of the essence here, I decided to just use the actual new world piece anyway and put that in. The next sort of step to kind of develop this and finish it all off was to actually give this gantry a little bit more of a structure, and I want it to be attached to the ceiling that we're going to bring in. So once we'd made it into one solid piece, we then grabbed some poles at like intervals of 4 and then dragged the roof down so that it all matched up. And we moved on to our mulch, where we were going to put in some nice greenery. I didn't want to do too much here because I am going to be making use of the greenery like filled panels later on, so these were just to kind of flesh out these areas where I had mulch. Now they're above mostly the staff buildings, but this one actually goes across a walkway for the staff, and it was just about getting all of that sorted and put into place. Really easy, very simple decoration, small amount of planting and things like that. Don't want it to be too distracting, so yeah, very simple. Over to the fountain. Now this is where things started getting a little bit more elaborate with the fountain. I tried playing around with some of the classical pieces and they do fit because they contrast really nicely with the conservation cladding and the plaster that we've got in there as well. You'll also notice what we did with the water here was we actually dragged the barriers all the way up so they formed the windows, and then the front piece has been dragged all the way down as far as we can go. There is glass at the very bottom of this pool, but I'm actually going to try and fill that in as best I can with mulch, plaster and all of the underwater foliage that we can actually put in there. I want it to kind of look more like a flooded grassy area rather than a clean and clinical fountain, because this is a research area, so I don't want it to be too corporate looking. I've already said this before, it needs to have a bit more of a natural touch to it, which is why we're kind of mixing it up and making it look a little bit overgrown. So once we kind of got the mulch adhered to the shape of the plaster circles, we then duplicated those plaster circles and moved them into position. So we had this nice kind of cascading effect in terms of our greenery and foliage and stuff. We'll be putting some plants and things on this later on, but it's just about getting the core structure of it put in place. Sunk them in so that they were covered by the water level, and then a little bit more mulch went in. I also wanted to make use of some of these African plaster pieces here just to try and get rid of some of the classical architecture that's in here, because whilst the colours and the textures and stuff kind of work, some bits of it don't, and because there's no other classical architecture in here, it doesn't really make sense to start putting it in now. And it might well be that we start moving some moss or ivy or things later on up the side of this, because we haven't actually decorated the front and we aren't doing that in this episode. There's going to be a point where we come back to this area as a whole and really finish it all off, but for the purpose of today's build, it's just about getting the research centre finished. So you can see us now starting to build up some mulch and then putting in some of the reward statues. Now I put in some seals and some, sea lions, flamingos and a few others, crocodiles, and that was about it, I think. And it was just to kind of add a little bit more texture into the whole piece and make it look a bit more of a montage than just kind of plopping stuff down. The alligators, one of them facing one way and the other one facing the other way, so it's kind of becoming this kind of carousel of animals, which, you know, is a song in the actual Planet Zoo soundtrack. And then we came in with some subaquatic plants just to really make it look a bit overgrown and cover up most of the glass. I could have just gone with mulch on this entire bottom floor, but I didn't think it was going to be a good idea. It may kind of change and we could put some rocks in here as well, but I just wanted to go simple with a bit of greenery in with the water, bits of mulch poking through, and our statues. So it's very simplistic, really. I think we put in some cowberry bushes a bit later on as well, and that just about finishes the whole thing off. So we're going to go into the tour, and this time I'm actually going to talk you through some of the bits that you may not have seen in the speed build because there was a lot going on. So let's go into the tour. So here we are, right outside our research and education centre. I think it looks amazing from the outside. We've got those lovely holly trees. I did end up going back and finishing that kind of front foliage area right in front of the fountain because I thought it looked a little bit unfinished when I came to do these recordings. So we've got this nice path leading in and then into the left or right entrances. Left is our office building and the right side is our educational kind of reception area. So let's move on. This is the information desk by Romanique83. As I've said, there are actually normally two information kiosks set in this little desk here, and it looks really cool. The computers really add an extra dimension to it. But because I'm not actually using it as an information kiosk at the moment, I thought I would just leave it as a bare reception desk. It looks really good. I think I could do a little bit more with the background here, just to give it a little bit of extra flair, but for now, I was pretty damn happy with it, and it's a great little build. You can see it here from another angle, and you can also see in the background there, the office furniture by Saphira Green. Now we're going to take a little look at that pack in depth a little bit later on towards the end of the video. Obviously, links to everything from the workshop that I've used are going to be down in the description, but this is quite a flat area. I just wanted it to have this like clean and clinical kind of appearance to it, but we could put in a few more planters and stuff just round that sweeping window there. I think that would look really nice. And here is a little bit more in detail of the office furniture by Saphira Green. That coffee machine is incredible, and the little file desks are great as well, the little shelving with all of the files and folders and stuff on. But this little tea and coffee station is amazing. Now, I have sunk these into the ground a little bit so that they're kind of more flush with the window, so they are a little bit lower, and that coffee machine, you know, you kind of have to bend down to use it, but I think it looks really cool. This one also comes with a mister on it as well, and this the computers are great. They've got a little bit of underlighting on there as well, so when it's dark it looks really cool. It's all looking really nice, and it gives us this really nice professional feel to it. So there's about like 8 workstations here, so we could have 8 students in here, 8 researchers or what have you, and I just think it's a really nice way to flesh it all out. We're gonna have another look at that coffee machine there because I was just amazed at how well detailed it was and how well it's put together. These little micro builds and micro furnishings, because of the large pieces we've got, I just think it's incredible what can be made with them and the people who actually spend the time to put in a load of effort. You can see there Ricey's Planter and Pottery Pack, which is by Ricey. We've used a few pieces from that, the hanging planters, the little potted plants, and the trailing kind of moss one. I did extend the moss a little bit so that it was on the floor, and that's combined with the office furniture by Saphira to great effect. Now this is all my build. We're now into the interior. I think the ceiling on this could maybe use a little bit of work, but what we've got here is really nice. I love the way that that greenery comes through those conservation cladding pieces, and then we've got that industrial upper kind of area where the aircon unit is going along, and there's that gantry for staff to walk across. This is what our actual exhibits end up looking like. We've got someone coming along there to clean it, and I just think that looks really clean and professional. We've got this nice open space here that, again, we could put some plants and stuff in there again if we wanted to. Again, I'd probably use Ricey's Planter and Pottery Pack just to really finish it all off. The ladder going up onto the gantry right next to that keeper hut, and then our lovely green space at the back of the the building. Now, I do have an idea for the back of this building. Kind of in the middle, we would put a doorway in, and that would lead out into the American wetlands area, so we could have a nice open deck on the opposite side there. Coming back into here, this is our little butterfly looking area, so our staff can observe this area, and then in front of that is actually the fountain, so you got a really nice walk through here. It's getting a little bit dark, but this is what it looks like from the outside. You can see the underlighting of the computer and the desk starting to come on. I think it looks really cool. It's a really nice building. I'm really quite proud of it. And this is Rice's planter and pottery pack, just a little bit more in depth there. There's loads to this, and you can actually just take the pots and the planters out, put them into your builds. Really recommend this pack. The link is in the description, as I've said. And Office Furniture by Sophia Green. You can see the coffee machine with a little bit of steam coming off it. I think that's a really nice touch, but the detailing here is incredible. Really well done to the creators who put these together. The three of you, Romanique, Ricey and Sophia Green, all deserve a great deal of credit for that. Please check out their stuff. They've got loads more there as well. That's well worth looking into. And this is what we are left with. So this was a bit of a slog, and I felt a bit burnout, but I'm pleased to have it done, and I want to thank you all again for your time in watching it. I will see you for the next one, where we finally get back into building some habitats. So thanks for watching one more time. See you next time, guys. Bye bye.